All right.
All right.
Cabo, looks like we're
We're
live.
live.
We're doing it.
We're live.
We're on there. We're making it happen. Coaching Development Live. This is second week. We finally got the co-host, Kristin Bowen. Last week, she was
I'm here.
on vacation. We had to suffer through a discussion with Pete, but I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, really strong suffering with Pete, probably, huh? I feel like he was a pretty strong.
Yeah, it was tough. Strong is
replacement.
literal. That dude's a monster.
Yeah.
For sure. So it was a fun conversation, but looking forward to diving into it with you today. I know we're going to jump in and talk about an issue of the professional coach. We've been reviewing those and posting those on the knowledge, also posting some of those reviews and discussions on YouTube as well. And so we'll do some of those live, probably bring on some of the authors as well. But before we jumped on, you made mention of the workout you guys are doing at your gym today. Tell me more about that. What do you guys?
Angie today, old school girl workout. When's the last time you did Angie, Todd?
I mean, it's 8 to 10 years.
The last time you've done it?
Yeah, which is interesting because it used to be one of my go-to when I first started CrossFit, and then I wasn't part of an affiliate and I was just trying to do it on my own. Like I would often go and do workouts at like playgrounds.
Okay.
And
like parks and
playgrounds. Yeah. And so I'd and there's actually where I'm at in St. Augustine, there's an elementary school, and AJ and I, my co-owner and friend that we started CrossFit together. We would go to the school. You'd have to climb the fence to get to the jungle gym. And like at nighttime or on the weekends, and we would do variants of Cindy. And so Angie was always one of our go-to workouts.
Just some good, clean fun. We're just trespassing, two adult men trespassing into an elementary school at night to get a good workout in. I love it.
To make that happen. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, exactly. So I would do that a lot. And here's what I found, and this is why I'm interested for you. I can't remember the last time we did it at the gym. And in fact, I think we programmed it probably within the last 5 years, but I do think I was out of town when we did it. But I will typically turn it into like strict Angie or do something to temper the pull-ups.
Okay.
Because I used to do it a lot early on because I was not any good at keeping pull-ups. And so I had, a max set was something like 10 or so. And so if my max set is 10, then I couldn't destroy myself. Nowadays, when I do it, I get crushed. I get absolutely crushed. So that's one of those workouts that we don't really program anymore because my arms don't straighten, and the mini case of rhabdo that I get from it is I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah, that one's it's a soul crusher, especially if you don't scale it correctly. And let's talk about what the workout is really quick, just so that everybody is clear on that. So it's 100 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats. Did I get that order right? Push-ups, pull-ups, push-ups.
It's pull-ups, push-ups, yeah, sit-up squats.
Sit-up squats, yeah. So really, by the time you get through the push-ups, it's smooth sailing from there, typically. Don't you think?
Once you get through the push-ups?
Yeah.
I mean, smooth sailing's a relative term. Yes, exactly. Like the sit-ups, you feel like you're on the downhill slope of the workout for sure. And 100 sit-ups in a row is not easy by any means, but it doesn't feel the same as pull-ups. And it's like it's a chance for you to and it's a chance for you to catch your breath, and you can kind of keep going right here. And then the squats, it's like you see the finish line in sight, and so I'll push through the squat. So yes, I would say you feel like you're almost done, but yeah. When was the last time you did it?
I'm laughing to myself because I laughed when you were like, oh, probably 8 to 10 years. And then as I'm thinking, I'm like, when's the last time I did it? And it's probably been about that long. I honestly can't. It probably hasn't been 8 years, maybe 5 years. I cannot remember the last time I did it. But that's one I think coaches have a hard time. I think coaches have a hard time scaling that one. I think, well, here's one of the reasons I brought this up to you earlier is in our coaches chain, one of the questions was, are we going to allow our athletes to partition it however they want, similar to what we do with Murph? And what do you think?
Well, it's no longer Angie if
That's
you're partitioning
exactly
the thing and
that's
that's it.
exactly what I said. That's exactly what I said. I think doing that workout partitioned, I think would be a great workout. Do it, partition it however you want, and just
It's
get
no
the
longer
work done. But then it's no longer
it's not
Angie.
Angie anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun to do as like a, hey, come up with a game plan to figure out the fastest that you could possibly do this, but it's definitely not Angie anymore.
Yeah, and
I see
hi Brad, good to see you. He also not sure if he's ever done it either or coached it. It's one that I think popped up so much more often like 10 years ago, and you just don't see it that often anymore.
just like, I think it's one of those that the longer CrossFit has been around and the more people have done CrossFit, the amount of capacity that just quote unquote average people have, it's so much more devastating than it was early on. Like I said, I mean, I've probably done it in my life 20 times. And it wasn't that bad until the last 3 times that I did it. And each time it's like I can do sets of 30 or 40 pull-ups or more. And I'm really trying to push the gas pedal down and no longer it used to almost be like a 30-minute workout. It was definitely like 25 minutes to get
like
it done.
Self-scaling almost, right? Because
Yeah,
it's like, well, I have to drop now and take a break because
Yeah.
I can only do 10 pull-ups in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I want to say I'd have to look it up, but I'd like to say like body weight and me are pretty good. So I'm not too bad at this, but I think I've done somewhere around 16 minutes or something like that, which
Okay.
my arms don't work a couple days after that. So
Yeah.
it is one that I personally like because I'm good at, but I also personally fear because I'm good at, I guess.
Now, when you coach a workout like that, is that one that you give little mini time caps within each movement?
Now we would be very specific on the reps. And so when we
Okay.
do that and when we talk to the coaches, it's like, this is, hey, what's the stimulus supposed to be? And that's like, hey, okay, it starts with 100 pull-ups. We want this to be no more than, call it 10 sets of 10. If I'm going to let somebody do this as prescribed, probably like they have to get it done in 10. So then all of a sudden it's like, all right, what do my athletes do? What can they do sets of? And I'm going to give them no more than 10 of that. And so if I've got an athlete that I know can typically knock out sets of 4 reps on their pull-ups before they need to come down and do a break, then it's like, all right, we're going to do somewhere between 30 and 40. But some of the
Okay, I
athletes, they
see.
can do
10
5 minutes.
like 10 sets of 4.
10
It's
sets
that
of
4
4 to
is their
get you
number.
there.
I see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so
Yeah,
we're
that's
very,
cool.
very strict on like, all right, we're going to scale your pull-ups. You're going to probably, I think most people, when we've done it before, is somewhere between 40 and 60 total. And then push-ups, you probably get a couple more, but then that's scaled too, just because of the time that it takes. And it's always one of those too, where like, technically push-ups and pull-ups are complementary movements, right? They're
Right,
not
a pull
redundant.
and a push.
Yes, but anybody that's done workouts that have pulls and pushes with pull-ups and push-ups, like they impact each other. And so you might be pretty good at push-ups, but after doing whatever number your pull-ups are, it's going to be significantly more challenging. So we'll scale the number there, and then we usually kind of cut people loose on sit-ups and squats because there's
Just
not
send
as
it at that point.
yeah, and there's not as much
Oh.
repercussion, and you can kind of chip away and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
for
So,
sure.
yeah. I'd be curious. I know we've got a couple of people listening. Anybody else on here? Brad made mention he's not done it. Has anybody else actually done Angie? When was the last time? What was your score? I'd be curious to know. So in your chat, what are your guys as coaches saying? Kristin, are you guys? What's the plan for scaling for you guys?
Oh yeah, we have a couple. We do what we call a tier system. We've been doing it for years, so all the athletes are really bought into it. It works really well, and it's essentially just the RX and kind of the intermediate, and then beginner is really what it is. But it's like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So we'll present the athletes with those different scaling options, and then we'll just make some adjustments depending on the athlete. So it's going to be volume. Like you said, there'll be some volume changes and then there'll be some movement changes, right? Like jumping pull-ups, ring rows. We do a lot of like down in a full plank position and then press up on your knees, or the kipping push-up. started
You
doing more of
intentionally
that.
drive your hips up first? Is that
When
or
you
your
get down
chest
to
up
the
first?
ground, no, you lift your legs, lift the feet up, and then kind of use the momentum to push yourself
I don't
up.
you do you guys teach that?
We have that as a scale. We'll use that as a scale. Yeah.
Oh, wow. People that's the one that people do that I try not to get them to do. But
Yeah.
yeah, like it just kind of naturally happens when they lay down, their toes come off the ground, and then
Uh,
they drive down, and then that gives them a little momentum there.
yeah. Well, I think the
Um,
difference is intentional, right? Like if you're trying to do it with the RX and real, I say real push-ups, but you know what I mean, like the RX, like unassisted push-ups, and you're lifting your feet off the ground each time, then it's like, hey, don't do that. Keep your feet on the ground. But to get some capacity and just the push-up and get the volume in there, yeah, do it. You know,
yeah.
time
So
cap on this one, or
yeah, will you guys do that?
we don't do time caps typically.
I couldn't tell
For
you
a
the last
4-time
time.
workout, for the task priority workouts, like we very rarely, maybe a hero workout here and there where it's like, okay, we've just we got to get everybody. If you're not done in 45 minutes, then we'll call it. But um, very rarely do we put time caps on task priority. What about you?
Yeah, same. I can't remember the last time. I know we've done it before, and I think there's a time and a place to do it. But kind of as I was mentioning before, is like we are so concerned with making sure that we get the reps right for folks that leads us down the road of typically, if we do it right, not needing to put a time cap on there. And so, and we're not afraid to rudder adjust. We as coaches are not afraid to change things up in the middle of the workout. Like if
For sure.
everybody else is done with their pull-ups and the person that I gave 45 reps is still grinding along, if I check in with them and they're like, hey, I'm at 22. All right, cool. We're going to get to 25 and we're done. If I get there and they're like, hey, I'm at 41, I'm like, all right, cool. You're going to do your last 4 and then keep going. But
Okay, so here's a question for you, because I think this is a pretty common um, struggle that coaches have. So let's use that same example. You go to your athlete, everybody's moved on, and you get to your athlete and you gave them 45 as their number. They're at 22, and you're like, all right, let's get to 25 and move on. They're like, no, I can do it. I want to do all my pull-ups. I want to do it. I'm going to do all of them. I got it. What do you do?
like normal that specific scenario, like if somebody if they're only planning to do 45, they're usually, from my experience, there's somebody that already is like taking my guidance. They know they don't have it in the tank to do all of them. And so I don't get much pushback. It would be the person that we had a discussion that they're like, no, I'm feeling good today. I think I can do 10 cents to 10 to get to 100. And I get to them. Everybody else
Okay.
is done and they're at 60.
Yeah, let's go with
And
that
I'm like,
person then.
yeah, that's the one that's a little bit tougher. And to Brad's point here, where he asked the question of like, because it's a benchmark where you allow it to go along, there are times with specific benchmarks where I will allow it to go long, but then there's also specific ones, and this one is one in particular, Angie, where I'm like, hey, allowing somebody to do too much because it's a benchmark and just because I know what that volume of pull-ups and push-ups will do to you, this isn't the one. This isn't the time and place for me to be like, all right, that's cool. I'm gonna let you grind this out today. More often than not, unless it's somebody that like I know puts in the work and does extra stuff and does high volume pull-ups. They're just for whatever reason not very fast at them. Maybe I would do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to that person, they were at 60 and they should be closer to 100. And they're like, no, I can do it. I'm gonna just be like, nah, trust me. We got to get moving and let's see if we can do it. And I'll try to make up for it on the back end of something, right? I want you to do bigger sets of your push-ups or something like that to try to give them a carrot to chase, rather than just be like, no, you're too slow. You need to move on.
It's
Something
too
like that.
slow. Yeah. Yeah. And I, even as you said that, I think over the years, I think I've also just given that whole thing like, all right, let's move on. If you're finished, if you end up finishing before, maybe I just throw a time out there, then we can loop back and essentially do like another set of your pull-ups. You can finish your pull-ups. So you end up doing the whole volume of your pull-ups or whatever, just kind of giving them, like you said, that little carrot to chase. And 9 times out of 10, if not even more than that, 9.9 times out of 10, they finish the workout, they're good to go. And then they end up being thankful.
Yeah.
Hey, coach, you were right. Thank you. I didn't realize what those push-ups would feel like after all those pull-ups. That was the right call.
And here's one thing, you want to know how crazy this is. I can remember when I first opened my gym, I'd been coaching at another gym prior to this. And I remember instructing my coaches this. I was like, hey, if we misscale an athlete and we give them permission, or we tell them to do more reps than they should have, they've already mentally committed to doing that. So in the middle of the workout, like, just go with it. In the middle of the workout, don't go and change it, because they've already committed to doing it. And I was thinking of myself as an athlete, whereas, like, even if it was probably scaled incorrectly, if I had already wrapped my brain around doing it, I want to do it. And, like, I remember telling my coaches that, and then, quickly within a few months of, like, you go to those athletes that are way behind and their eyes are this big because they're dying. And I'm like, come on, I know you're only at 40. You got 60 more to go. And
they're
I'm
seeing
like,
everybody else pass by.
yes.
People
And I
are
finally,
finished.
I think I got to the point where I'd be like,
Workout.
hey, do we want to only do 50? And they're like, yes, please. And then I realized what a mistake it was to ever potentially tell my coaches to be like, no, if you messed it up, just make them suffer regardless. It's like, most people aren't as
No
crazy
take
as I
backs.
am.
No take backs.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, come on, what a dummy.
Oh, man.
Brad asked another question. Interested in your opinion, do time caps help coaches be better because of the timeline management aspect of it, or do you prefer not to have them? So I think that's the value of the time cap, is like, what the time cap does is allows us to stay on track with our lesson plan, regardless of our ability to scale. And so if I'm a newer coach and I, maybe haven't been taught, I haven't thought about, there's not a lot of direction on scaling, well, then I can, and maybe it's a gym where kind of coaches don't necessarily scale the athletes scale themselves. And then this is a way to put a hard cap on there, to where it's like, hey, if I'm going to let you scale yourself and you do it wrong, you're not going to finish. And so
You're
that's
just not
kind
gonna
of like,
finish. Yeah.
that's your self scaling. I'll tell you, like, I think the reason I don't ever use time caps is because when I started coaching, I don't think time caps were a thing. And so I just had to live and
They weren't.
learn with, like, it's like, no, this was the workout. You've got to do the workout. It says X, Y, and Z. That's what we're all going to do. There was no, get out of jail free card with the time cap. And so I just had to go through the struggles of misscaling people, not knowing how to determine time stimuluses of workouts, and messing up my lesson plans and my timelines for classes, and then just figure it out on the fly. And I think for me, that ultimately helped me. I'm sure there were members at my gym when I was coaching early morning classes that was supposed to be done at 7 a.m. that would get done at 7:20. They weren't very happy with me. Probably wasn't great for retention, but I learned a lot through that process. So I think that's where I'm at with time caps. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, and Brad's saying a coach knows their drop dead start time, and absolutely. And if, let's say, we've got a workout where the stimulus is like 10 to 12 minutes, right? In my lesson plan, I'm usually going to allot 15 minutes for that. So internally, kind of behind the scenes, I know that, like, my coaching time cap is going to be about 15 minutes. I want everybody finished in that 10 to 12 minutes, but I'm going to scale everybody, hopefully, so that we get people in that 10 to 12 minutes with a little bit of buffer room. But I don't necessarily tell the athletes that. And I don't tell the athletes that, because what I want to happen is them to trust in how I scale them, listen to what I'm telling them to do, so that everybody finishes within that same time zone of each other. And then if I see that there's somebody, if I misscaled, or, however the case may be, and I see that there's somebody that's really pushing it, and likely I check in with them, maybe the halfway point, 75% point, and they are not going to finish under that 15 minutes, then I'm going to give them a different, like, I'm going to scale it. Like you said, oh, how many reps are you on? You still have 60 reps to go. Let's go ahead and let's just do 5 more reps and then move on to the next thing. And one of the things you kind of just said a little bit tongue in cheek, like that get out of jail free card, that is, let's talk about that point a little bit, because on both coach's side and athlete side, the time cap can be a little bit of a get out of jail free card, because we can, as coaches, we can use it to just not necessarily need to scale everybody correctly, because we know, like, well, at the end of the day, they're all going to finish in 15 minutes. So it's fine. So if you're really mindful of the stimulus and you're really pushing a culture in your gym of making sure that everybody's scaling correctly so that they meet the stimulus and finish the workout, in that time where it's supposed to be finished, but you still use time caps simply just because that's the way you do it for your lesson plans, then cool. But if we're using time caps as a way to just let everybody kind of pick their own adventure, scale it however they feel like they need to, because at the end of the day, it's like, well, regardless if people finish or not, everybody's going to be done at 15 minutes, then that isn't really I don't think that that's really the right way to use them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's like our goal should be to, as a coach, to know and understand the stimulus, or at least be given the stimulus, and then have strategies and options on how to get people to that point. And it also, like, I look at it, if we put time caps on every workout, you may, get out of jail free. We talked about for the coach, but for the athlete as well. Like,
Yes.
think about the workout filthy 50, right? We've got 10 exercises, 50 reps each. The last 3 movements are wall ball shots, burpees, or maybe it's burpees, wall ball
And
shots,
double
and then double
unders.
unders.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now, as an athlete, I would much rather have a time cap and do all of the reps, and the time cap guarantees that I don't have to do any wall balls, burpees, or double unders, because the workout's significantly different if that's the case, right? If it's like, oh, well, I
Yeah.
did it at RX. I did 50 reps of each of these and I got through the first 5 movements at the 25-minute time cap. Man, that was hard. I'll tell you right now what was way harder. Do
The
30
last
reps
three,
of
that
each
movement
and
starts at
do
the
those.
last 3 movements. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Every time I do that workout, I'll look at the clock about halfway or even 3/4 of the way, and I'm like, I am crushing this. I'm going to PR by like 5 minutes. And then I
Yeah.
get to those last 3 movements. It's like, nope, right back to where I was last time. So yeah, if you've got a time cap there, it's, the clock. We say this at the level ones a lot, right? Like, that clock is going to save your ass. You look up
Yeah.
there, you're like, all right, I could pick up the bar. I could do a couple more reps. Look at the clock. It's like, I only have 30 more seconds. And then the workout is over. Instead
Yeah.
of, like, the workout ends when you finish the work. So there's
Yeah.
an element there that helps push our athletes a little bit more when they don't know that there's a time that the workout is going to actually end.
Yeah. I completely agree. So yeah, I try not to let people off the hook with that. I think what pops into my mind is another thing that I think athletes sometimes try to do, which is make the workout quote unquote harder, but actually make it easier. And so I've seen athletes that, like, have so much pressure on themselves to either beat somebody else in the gym or to beat their previous time, and they deep down know that that's not going to be the case. And so instead of, like, selling your soul and, like, pushing the gas pedal down to, one, lean into intensity, which we all know is the scariest, hardest part of our program.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 2, face the reality that, man, I might not PR, or I might not beat this person that I really want to beat. So instead, I'm going to do it RX plus. I'm going to add more weight, where it's like, we had
That's the old RX plus.
yeah, or like, oh, it's a mile time trial run. I'm going to run it with a vest. And it's like, you just made your workout easier. No, but I'm wearing, it's 20 pounds. It's like, yeah, that's easier because you're going to go 90 seconds slower. Like, stop. Don't. I don't know if you watched the video with Nicole and DT on CrossFit training on their YouTube channel that went
Not
up
yet, not yet.
the other day, which was cool. And Nicole's talking about just the vulnerability that occurs when you've got to put your scores out there. And I'll tell you right now that getting into CrossFit, as somebody who was an athlete that leaned into sports that I was fairly good at and could perform well at, and essentially, like, avoided things that I wasn't very good at. I really liked CrossFit, and there were things I was really good at, and then there were the things I wasn't very good at. And it really challenged me a lot, especially in the early, probably first couple years of CrossFit, of being vulnerable enough and willing to, like, post scores when I thought I sucked, when I
Yeah.
didn't achieve the score that I thought I should, or beat the person that I wanted to beat. And that humility that it's taught me is probably the best lesson that I've gotten from CrossFit, that it's like, it's okay to try your hardest and still not be very good. Because guess what? You're going to learn a lot about yourself. And if you come back tomorrow and you try a little bit harder, or you work on that thing, you can actually get good at it. So, I think time caps, RX plus, all that stuff is just a different way to kind of do that exact same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see, Brad, when you think of stimulus, what is your avatar you have in mind when looking at a workout? I'm thinking of an above average athlete. Like we've got, nowadays you can say like quarterfinals or whatever, when quarterfinals was the 10% of the open. And so it's in my mind, I'm like, I've got a couple athletes, I've got a couple guys and a couple girls at my gym that can do these workouts, pretty much everything that shows up as prescribed for the most part. And so I'm like, all right, how long is this going to take them? What's that weight going to feel like for them? And that's where we start with this thing. So if you look at it, like in my mind, that's a sub 2-minute Fran. That's a sub 2-minute Grace and Isabel.
Mm-hmm.
That's 20 plus rounds of Cindy.
20 plus rounds, yeah.
Yeah, like that type of stuff. It's a 23-minute 5K. And so now all of a sudden it's probably like a 250 to 275 pound clean and jerk, 215 to 225 pound snatch, deadlift that's 400, back squat that's 350. It's like, all right, cool. If that's my parameter, and then I look at that and dictate the scaling options, what's that workout going to be for that athlete? And those were male numbers, obviously, that I was given there. That's what I look at. What about you?
Now, well, let me ask a little follow-up question. What about for those coaches that are at gyms that might have a different population, or they're a little bit newer gym and they don't necessarily have any members that are in that advanced kind of quarterfinal category? Would you still create that type of avatar that's like a little bit like kind of that advanced, even if you don't have an athlete in your gym?
Yeah, absolutely. Because those are the athletes I want. And Brad makes mention those are stud numbers. Brad, those are your numbers, bro.
Yeah, man.
At a minimum.
But we have to have that rabbit to chase, right? Like if you're programming so like the top person in your gym is always able to crush everything, you're not giving them an opportunity to chase something as well. So
here, and this is what I want, like, and we make a point to do this, is program workouts that even that athlete that I talked about is going to scale.
Yeah.
It's like
every once in a while, right?
We want workouts that everybody in the gym is going to post RX. And then I also want workouts that everybody in the gym is going to post scaled. Either, the volume of the gymnastics movements or the loading for the reps and all of that stuff. Or maybe just our RX athlete comes in and they don't feel it that day and they're not afraid to scale it.
Yeah, because there are workouts that have been posted that I'll hear coaches in the community be like, this is ridiculous. Nobody in my gym can do this workout. And it's like, that's okay. Yes. Yeah, that's okay. It's not going to happen every single time, but it is okay and what happens is a lot of times, here's the trap, right? You become a quote RX athlete. And then suddenly it's like, well, there's no turning back now. I've entered the RX room. I'm not going back in that scaling room ever. And it's like, that is not the way to look at it.
And I think you've got it, like, you as a leader, either the gym owner or just a coach in general, have to be the one that sets the tone on that stuff.
For sure.
Like, I love, like, you come to my gym, pretty much 5 days a week, unless something weird's up or I'm traveling or something like that. I'm in our noon class, I'm doing the workout, and I'm scaling when it's appropriate, and the post and my score goes in the log, right? I want everybody to see what I'm doing. I think one of my biggest roles as an affiliate owner is to be in the gym in class doing the workout and posting my scores and scaling when is necessary. And most of those numbers that I mentioned were things that I've done in my life. I don't know that I could do them currently in my life, but those are things that I've done in my life. So it's like, hey, I'm probably a little bit above average, but I'm definitely not the best in my gym. And especially the longer we've gone on this journey, like, there's nothing that was more frustrating, but also more rewarding than to watch my athletes get close to me, catch up to me, and then pass
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, oh man, this sucks.
It's like a tough pill to swallow, right? And then one day you just are like, Why don't you just pass the torch down
And that's great. And
celebrate
that's like
their
sweet. Like the
numbers.
fact that we've got members that are doing that means we're doing something right. The program's
Yeah,
working, the coaching,
absolutely.
like their positions and all of that kind of stuff. So um yeah, that's where my head's at with that. What do we've got? Let's see. It's easier now with workouts being designed by other programmers and it's given to you. But if you have to come up with it yourself, it's more challenging. And I'll tell you, you can't rely on the stimulus provided by the program. I don't always think that's right. In fact, I was talking to somebody just this week that was like, "Hey, we loosely follow CAP. We probably 3 workouts a week or CAP workouts that we kind of move around. Um, and then I kind of fill in the gaps with our gym's benchmarks and things like that." And somebody was like, "Hey, did you do this specific CAP workout? What was the stimulus?" And we use the workouts and we'll look at like lesson plan stuff, but we have the freedom to do our own thing. So I don't typically even really look that close at the stimulus because we'll determine it based on the way that we calculate it, right? And we had somebody that was like, "Did you see the stimulus for this workout?" It was like 3 rounds of an 800-meter run, 21 push-ups, and 12 hang cleans.
Okay.
And the stimulus time was like, maybe it was 4 rounds. I don't know. It was something like 10 to 12 minutes or
Oh,
something like that,
fast.
or it was something crazy. And she was like, "Did you see what the stimulus was?" And I was like, "I didn't even look." But sometimes people that are programming are so fit that they don't even realize like what what it might look like for others. And so I always double check and we go with our stimulus, not necessarily what's given to us.
Yeah, I agree with that, Brad. So you have to just program home run workouts every once in a while just to let them know you still got it.
Yeah, that's it. Give me
Still
the
got it.
Angies, give me the Cindy's, give me the high volume muscle ups or strict handstand push-ups. I'm fine. You make me lift a heavy barbell at all, you make me run at all.
Oh
You
yeah.
guys just
Don't make me
absolutely
run.
bury me. So anyways, yeah, that's the case.
We had a workout we did yesterday. It had power cleans and front squats in it, which was great for me because power cleans all day, like all day, every day. I love them. Front squats, not so much. And so it was just that great, like, well, I'm going to scale the weight down. Did I need to for the power cleans? Absolutely not. But the front squats crushed me. So
Yes.
it's just every day is a different challenge. And it's good to see, like you said, the board and see some of the people up there putting their scores up there with the weights they use. And it's just like, oh man, I used to crush that person and it just doesn't happen so much anymore.
Yeah. Just
But
the
I'm
good old
still
days.
in there,
Yeah,
still
the
doing
good
it.
old days, the good old days for sure. Now, I think this leads well into the article that we wanted to cover, which was from the professional coach, and it was actually, I think, the newest article or the newest version of the professional coach. It was sent out on July 11th, and the new to you athletes that are refusing to scale. So we've talked about not using time caps, scaling for each and every one of our athletes, and that's easier said than done when you've got athletes that have been a part of your affiliate and that's just how you do things. And so that's how they know it should be done. What do we do when we've got a new athlete? Maybe it's a drop in, maybe it's somebody that just moved to town and they just started working out at your gym. How do you go about trying to scale those athletes and how do you coach those athletes? So Kristin, let's say you've got somebody, they've got years of CrossFit experience. They're showing up to your gym. They jump into your class. First time you've met them. How do you approach that athlete?
Yeah, I mean, well, it starts with a conversation, right? Like introduce yourself, find out a little bit about them. Have you done CrossFit before? Oh yeah, okay, cool. Where? How long? You can get a little bit of an idea of what their experience is there. And that gives you a nice baseline. If someone comes in, oh yeah, I've been doing it for about 5 years. Okay, great. I think we both know that doesn't really mean too much, right? It
Yeah.
gives me a little bit of a base of understanding, like, okay, they've been in a CrossFit gym before. That's usually why I'll ask them where too. Especially in our situation, I think we have a unique situation in that we've gotten to travel around a lot. We know a lot of people in the community. So that's a great little cheater for me. If someone's like, oh yeah, I'm from Northern Virginia, I've been going to CrossFit MPH for 5 years. I'm like, cool, you're good to go, right? Like, we know Melody up there. We know that's a solid, legit gym. That doesn't happen very often, right? Where I'll say, oh, I've been going to fill in the blank, or I've been doing CrossFit classes at whatever Globo gym. Great. So they maybe have a baseline understanding, but the proof is in the pudding. So it's all going to be about what their movement looks like. We're going to watch them during the general warm up. That's going to give me a really great idea of what, just simply watching them set up for an air squat, I'll be able to tell.
There's so much to be said with that. And I think to your point right there, that, and it's even mentioned in the article here, is like pre-workout. So they come in, you ask them some questions. What I add to what the questions you just mentioned is like, hey, any injuries I should know about, or anything going on. And typically, depending on their age, you get something like, oh, nothing that'll stop me from doing something, or, oh,
just
does age count? Yeah, something like that, right? But then I'm not going to say much other than start to assess, watch them move, right? That's where, hey, you hit the whiteboard brief, you start the general warm up, and I continue checking in and asking more questions. And then I'm watching what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And their first couple reps of the movements that are in general warm ups typically tells me quite a bit of like, all right, there's some things with movement, what their air squat looks like, things like that, that's going to tell you a lot of how much time they've either spent on their movement, how much coaching they've had on that. And so that's going to start to paint a picture for me. I might be like, hey, try widening your feet just a little bit. Do this with your toes. Hey, can you reach your hands up over your head or something like that? And just when I give those first couple cues, that's going to start to tell me a lot about how they react. Are they receptive?
Like, what's their responsiveness to getting feedback on their movement, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And so this is kind of it, of like, assess the technical proficiency. It's like, I'm starting to get some of this, and then I'm also trying to assess how willing are they to listen to my cues. It's great when it's like, hey, widen your feet a little bit, or bring them in, or turn your toes out, and they do it and they try it. Awesome. Then, you give some praise and feedback and things like that. When you ask those questions, or you give those little cues, and you get, no, this is how I do it. Then it's like, okay, all right, I know where I'm headed with this thing. Let's see how this thing goes a little bit. And so then you get through that general warm up and into the specific warm up. And once again, I think this is where it can be a little bit more challenging.
I love that first line right there. Kind of goes to what we were talking about a little bit ago, right? Ideally, scaling parameters are in place before starting the workout, and no adjustments will need to be made during the workout. But we still need to assess during the workout. We know that we may need to do that rudder adjustment. But ideally, we're getting them where they need to be during that specific warm-up, during the test round, if maybe you have one of those, so that they're set up for success for the workout.
And so let me ask you this. So you've got that new to you athlete. You watch the way that they move, and it's not maybe up to what you ideally want. You give some cues and corrections, and there's a little bit of pushback, or you can feel a little bit of friction there. And then they start adding some weight for the barbell after the specific warm-up, and they're like, hey, what's our X again? And you're watching them move, and you can already tell that it's like, when I answer what our X is, I know it's a weight that you're not going to be able to do. So how do you deal with that?
Oh, that's the tough one, right? Like, that's where sometimes we need to be, as coaches, we need to be okay with being a little bit uncomfortable. We need to be okay with living in that friction, knowing that we've talked about this before, Todd, you and I, it's just positive intent, right? Like, I'm going to assume positive intent from my members. And in turn, I want to create a culture where they assume positive intent from me. And so what is my job? It's to keep them moving safely, but still get them a good workout in. Now, the new to you athletes you don't have that rapport. You haven't really necessarily created that buy-in with them. So it's a conversation, and it's quite frankly me being okay if they are a little bit pissed at me, right? Because ultimately, and I don't want it to be that. I don't want them. So I'll treat it with, read the room, right? Like, this is where we have to be able to have some some emotional EQ and be able to read people. And it's like, okay, how does this person need to be interacted with? But at the end of the day, what is a hard stop for me is I'm not going to let them, maybe I'll let them go a little heavier than I want them to go, but I'm going to be right there and we're going to pull weight off as soon as it looks like there's any chance of them, being unsafe or hurting themselves. But ideally, we're going to have a quick conversation and I'm going to give them something, here's the reason why, or let's start with this weight. And then after 2 rounds, if you're still moving quickly and we want to add a little more weight, we can, or different strategies depending on the person. Right.
Yeah. It's tough. That's always like people that have like part of the knowledge and things like that probably know that at our gym, we don't put RX weights on the board. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are RX weights. The coaches know what those are. Inevitably, athletes will ask about it and end up getting there. So it's not like some complete like secret that we're trying to avoid, but it's more just to create the culture where people aren't chasing RX, right? So somebody's a drop in. There's no weights written on the board. We start talking about the stimulus. And when that person goes, well, what's the RX weight? Then it's typically like, I'll respond with, hey, we want these to be done in 2 sets. Do you think you can do that with 135? And then I'll either get, oh yeah, I can probably do that, or no, or whatever. And so it's like, I don't just immediately give the weight. I tell them the stimulus again to make sure that they get a little buy-in or a little understanding there. It's like, hey, we want this done in 2 sets. You think you can do that with 135? Somebody will say, yeah, I think so. And it's like, cool, add a little bit of weight to this thing. Let me see what it looks like. And I'll be like, hey, I think that's going to be pretty challenging to maintain those sets of 6 to get this done in 2 sets, right? It's 12 reps each round. Yeah, I think I can do it though. What's your time cap? That's the next one that becomes tough, because then I'm like, well, we're not going to have a time cap, but I need this done in whatever, 12 minutes, whatever this is. Do you think you can do that? And once again, I'm trying to kind of put it on their shoulders of like, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do, but I'm going to nudge you in that direction, that these are the parameters and what we're looking for here. And so hopefully you start to get the idea of like, what do you need to do to make sure that you hit these parameters?
Yeah.
And
Continuing to ask those like leading questions, almost to where it's like, they say, I think I'm going to use 115. And then you can be like, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I like that. I like that strategy.
I think you'll crush this thing. Or what it does is like, if I'm on that kind of like borderline where I'm like, I don't really think they should do the 135, and I know like they're not going to maintain the sets that I want, because I've set like reinforced the time duration that we're looking for and that there's no time cap, it makes the discussion mid-workout a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're a little bit behind. Let's go less reps, or let's take off a little bit of weight. I want to make sure that you get done in that 12 minutes. And it kind of like, you might have somebody dragging their feet a little bit, but it at least allows that conversation to be had a little bit easier and try to get there.
I'm a huge fan of what you were saying, giving people those parameters, like this first set should be done in no more than 2 sets, or you need to be able to do sets of 10. And just giving those really like kind of hard qualifier numbers, I think is really helpful to guide people into making the right choice for themselves.
Yeah. And then I think this here, like once you get through the workout, whatever that is, however you navigate getting through the workout, whether it's letting them go RX, even if they don't quite hit the stimulus that you want, or hopefully convincing them to kind of have the idea to scale appropriately with your nudge in that direction. Like one of the best ways that I've gotten buy-in from people is just the old fashioned kill them with kindness. Mm-hmm. Oh man, that was really, really cool. You did this really, really good. You're super fast here. This was great. And especially as I'm trying to build some rapport with them, it's like they're trying to feel me out. I'm trying to feel them out. I want to give them as much positive reinforcement as possible. So that way that they realize, it's like, I think sometimes people come in the gym and they feel kind of attacked when you start cueing and correcting their movement. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, no,
I'm almost embarrassed sometimes too, which they shouldn't at all. But if they're not used to getting cued and getting that feedback, I think people can definitely feel that way for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, hey, if I give them enough praise and positive reinforcement, then they're like, oh, he's not here to tell me how bad I am or whatever that is. It's more so I'm building them up, and now I'm looking for ways that I can make them even better to where I can
Mhm.
praise them even more. So I think that's a big piece of this, of just the more that you can create that connection and make it a positive experience, I think the easier the conversation is going to be the next time you do it.
Yeah, for sure. And that also lends itself to the point that we make a lot, where we have to be working to make sure we're giving feedback, corrections, and coaching to all of the athletes in the class, not just the new person, right? Like everybody that's in there, the person that's been coming for 10 years, the person that's coming for 6 months, the brand new to you, because then that doesn't single anybody out. And then you, again, create this culture where it's like, oh, everybody, that person clearly is the best person in this class, and they're getting corrections on their movement. It's not just me.
100%. Yes, that was exactly the next place I want to go with this, is like, if everybody's getting cued and corrected, nobody feels isolated and picked on. Whereas if it's only the new person and I'm like, Kristin, widen your feet, push your knees out, lift your chest up, go down and weight, and everybody else is just free reign doing whatever they want. And that goes for not only like somebody, a new to you athlete, but just athletes in general. And if we think
Yep.
about that as coaches, typically who needs our most attention? It's going to be the most either beginner or the most deconditioned athletes. And if they're the only ones that we end up coaching and giving attention to, they're going to feel isolated, whether you want it to be that case or not, whether it's with good intentions, that's the way it's going to be. So to your point, if we can create a culture where I'm cueing and correcting every single athlete I interact with on every movement throughout, and I'm checking in with everybody on the weights that they're using, then that is just part of the program, and nobody feels picked on, isolated, like, oh man, Kristin doesn't think that I can do this, I'll show her, whatever that is. It's just like, oh, cool, this is just part of it. So
Yeah, and if
love
you're a
that.
coach and you struggle with correcting some of your better athletes, one of the tips that I give is just think of one of the points of performance you're looking for and then ask them to do a little bit more. Almost always they can push up on the bar a little bit harder, or they could crunch their belly a little bit more. Just say something to them, right? And then that, at least, and you'll see if you're like, hey, Todd, push up on the bar a little bit more. And then you see that happen. It's like, yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. Good job. And then boom, you've just made a correction on one of your more experienced, better athletes.
I call those grenade cues, right? I'm a
Okay.
roster groom, and there's like, hey, I can always tell somebody to get in their heels more. I can always tell somebody to crunch their abs down more. I can always tell somebody to press the bar up a little bit harder. And I'm just throwing out these grenades. It's like, hey, was Kristin not crunching her abs down? I'm not sure, but can she do it
Doesn't
better or
matter.
more? Of course she can. And so we
Yes.
go ahead and do that. And that, once again, to your point, allows me to coach, see and correct, buys me time to actually be able to see the things that do need improvement. And that's going to make it better for us there. Couple things that are mentioned here. We got AAA in the comments, man. Love seeing you here on the live call. We got Brad forecasting out how someone is going to feel 3 or 4 rounds into a workout is so hard to figure out. Kristin, do you have any guidance for Brad here with that?
Well, I agree, first of all. We can do little test rounds sometimes if those can help. Read this: forecasting how someone is going to feel 3 to 4 rounds into workout. It's so, and it's just, I think it's a little bit of knowing the programming, right? Like knowing the movements, knowing how they're going to interact with each other, right? Like I know that if I'm doing a row with a clean with a pull up, that 3rd or 4th round is going to feel a little bit different, because look at all the pulling that's happening. Like we know it's going to be grippy. That those things are going to happen. So that's something that we can kind of take into account. I don't know. What do you think, Todd?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, this to me has been something that has come just with the amount of experience that I have. One, I base so much of my coaching off of me as an athlete. I've now done so many of
I
these
do
workouts.
as
I
well.
know
Yeah.
where I fall apart. I know how hard it is for me. And it's like, I feel confident in the fact that it's like I can look at these athletes and kind of compare myself to them, where I'm like, hey, this got really hard for me here. And I know you're more beginner than I am, or you're more advanced than I am.
Hmm.
And so based on you being more beginner, we're going to do less because I know what's going to happen in that 3rd or 4th round. You're better than me, so I know we can push it a little bit more potentially in that. So like me doing workouts and knowing where things fall apart. And then over time, there's just this, I've just worked with these average everyday people for so long now, fortunately, that I just have this, it's almost like a sixth sense to look at somebody and be like, I think sets of 8 are going to be where we need to be today. And then I check in, and then there's a lot of follow-up. It's like I try things, I prescribe a rep number and rounds, and then I'm checking in throughout and like remembering what I prescribed, and I'm watching them move. And I'm like, cool, did it work the way I wanted it to? If so, I put it in my memory bank, and I'm like, all right, that was a good choice. That was a good one for that, like that specific athlete next time. That avatar, that's what's going to happen. When I've done it wrong over the previous years and I'm like, man, I gave them too much. That was a bad choice. Boom. All of a sudden I put that in the memory bank too of like, hey, next time I'm going to err on the side of less, even though I thought this was a good idea here. So
yeah, I mean,
tough.
as you're saying that, I'm even thinking about certain movements that you just learn over experience, like toes to bar. Now, if there's a high rep toes to bar, I always coach the athletes to stop before they think they need to. If you think you have a couple more reps in the bank, just stop, because once you hit that failure on the toes to bar, it's really hard to get back from it. So just little tiny tips like that we really only get from the experience, from doing the workouts that we're programming, and I know it's not necessarily realistic that we're all going to be able to do every workout before we coach a class on that workout. But at least doing these workouts so that you have an understanding of what it feels like can be helpful as well.
We got Brad for more advanced folks. I like to think and talk in terms of max sets. If there's a high volume, don't go over 50% of your max set, or same thing with the percentage of barbell movements. I think that's great, right? Hey guys, I know you can probably do a set of 10 toes to bar in a row, but my recommendation over the course of this workout, they're going to go away. So think about small, quick sets, and maybe bites. Do 3 sets of 4 or whatever to get to where you need to be. I think that makes a ton of sense. Now the percentage on lifts there are tough from my experience, because I don't know that a lot of people know those unless you're testing them regularly. But same deal, you can give that kind of guidance of like, hey, this should probably be about 50%, which means you should be able to do 10 in a row with this barbell before you put it down, right?
Just throw an extra thing. If you're going to give the percentage, I like doing that as well. Just knowing, okay, well, if I know my percentage, what's that going to feel like for me realistically? How many reps am I going to be able to get where that's a good set? Okay, now I'm going to give my members 50%, or, you need to be able to do a set of 10 or, whatever before, just to give them a little guidance there.
All right. Yeah, look at this. I just realized I need to pop this thing up. Yeah, you like that. Here we go. I love this question. So talking about static positions and having people hold them to give cues and feedback, how long is too long to have them hold the position as a class to call cues for feedback? And we've talked about this a lot recently on coach development calls and also knowledge calls. And this is another one why it's important for us to be athletes and be in class. And I'll tell you right now, let me ask this question to you, Kristin. Okay. Would you rather hold a little bit longer or do an additional rep as an athlete?
It depends on what the movement is. It depends on what the movement is and what position that I'm in.
Well, think about a position probably do a rep, right? Like set up static positions are not very fun to hold. I would rather move through that. So it's like, you want more context. All right. Would you rather hold the bottom of the deadlift? Or do 10 reps?
I would rather just do 10 reps of the deadlift.
Cool. Would you rather hold the bottom of the front squat, or would you rather do 5 reps of it?
Yeah, 100%, 5 reps of the front squat.
So how long? It's like, I can't give you a hard and fast number, but here's what I'm going to tell you. If it's a hard position to hold, my recommendation would be to call more reps to give you the time to see. And the quicker you get at calling those reps, and the better you get at figuring out what that time is, the easier it's going to be for your athletes. And so going back to that deadlift one, it's like, all right, guys, I'm going to work on checking the setup here. I've got 10 people in class. I'm going to get you guys down. Could I I hold the position and get around to 10 people? Probably so. Will some people start squirming? Probably so. So instead, if I've got 10 people in class, I'm probably going to look at doing 3 to 4 reps and allow me to look at 3 to 4 people at a time before I have them stand and relax. It's like, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a long break. It can just be enough of like, all right, guys, down in your setup. Cool. I've looked at 3 people. Stand. All right, reset. It literally can be that quick. But I think going down and up, rather than just holding for 35 seconds, which with a PVC pipe is, or a barbell is going to be tough.
Yeah. And every time you call the rep, of course, that's giving them an opportunity to warm up and do another rep and give you a chance to look at something dynamic. But the other part of that is the longer we do have to, there's a little balance, right? Because while we do want to see people in those static positions, the longer we hold them, the more likely they are not going to have as good of a position as we want. Like you said, they're going to get a little bit squirmy, which means they're going to relax a little bit. And if we really want them working hard and holding as good of a position as they can, we have to make sure that we give them an opportunity to get out of that position and then get back into it. So if we're trying to hold them so long that we're trying to look at all 10 of those people in that setup position, you're probably not going to see everybody in as good of a position as they can get in, because they just kind of have to relax a little bit.
Yeah, and so my guidance is like, I know we didn't give you a hard and fast answer there, but I would try to have some awareness of what our athletes are doing. And if you see people starting to squirm at all, or somebody in the back corner stand up, like, have them do another rep. Be like, all right, guys, stand and reset.
Yeah.
And it's like, once again, I would probably err on the side of a little bit shorter time duration as opposed to longer time duration.
Yeah, and just get more reps in.
Let's see. We got one more we'll talk here with Brad. Same thing with an athlete who can do 1 bar muscle up or 1 handstand push up and want to do them in the workout. So you have to figure out how to let them have fun and keep it moving. Yeah. And so this is one where it's like, cool. Like, I think we're doing Diane at my gym today. And this will be one where it's like, I don't have many athletes that are going to be doing 45 handstand push-ups. So how can I come up with a number that either challenges those athletes that have it, or allows them to do it and have fun? And for us, it's like, we'll typically have athletes that have that specific movement either lower the reps if it's something that's still going to land in the stimulus. So maybe like,
so you would lower the reps, but still have them do the handstand push-up, for example.
Yeah. So maybe like 11, 8, and 5, something like that for the rounds of 21, 15, and 9. Or the other option is, hey, I want you to do 2 handstand push-ups at the start of each round and then finish with whatever scaling option it's going to be: pike push-ups, pike off a box, dumbbell press, something like that. So it's like probably switches each time we do a workout like that, but I want them to get some exposure there, get a chance to do that thing that's fun, but also not like just completely blow up the timeline.
Yeah, and there's value, that time under tension, right? Like there's value for them to do the bar muscle up in the workout with the stress of the clock going, and knowing that you have to, you don't have 4 minutes to sit there and look at the bar and put chalk on your hands and get ready. It's like, no, you got to get up and try to do it. So there's value to try to do it in that like stress environment. And we do that a lot, like you said, but we're not going to have them just struggle through, because we know they can do a bar muscle up. So it's like, cool, do a bar muscle up. And then after that, you're going to do the remaining 4 or whatever with jumping or whatever the scale is that we've chosen for that day.
Yeah. And Brad may mention that was in reference to the scaling we were talking about before. And so those are some of those movements. And I find the same thing with like dips or push-ups, where it's like they go away. And so how do I come up with a number that allows my athletes to do this when in rounds 3 or 4, I'm not really sure how this is going to turn out? And so you can give some guidance of like, hey, I want you to start every round with 3 handstand push-ups, but if they go away and you can only get 1 unbroken or whatever, then let's just do all the reps with the scaled version or whatever that is. So you can give some guidance and some parameters on that stuff there.
Love it.
All right. Kabo, that was a pleasure.
Fun.
Yeah. Always a good time. Love hearing from you guys too. Make sure we are going to continue these every Thursday at the same time, 9 a.m. Eastern. So love to see you guys on. Bring any questions, coaching related or otherwise.
Yeah, I loved getting the questions and being able to just chat and answer the questions. And so bring your questions. Let's go.
Yeah, we got it. So look forward to seeing you guys next week. Appreciate it. Thanks, Kristin.
Thanks, Todd. Bye.